Hello and welcome everybody, I'm OneProperVariant. This is of course Crusader Kings III Dev Diary number 51. We start today with It's Time to Duel, and this is the final major free patch feature that is single combat. So we now know that, my suspicion early on when we started all of this was indeed correct. We will know what the DLC is, and hopefully also when it actually comes out on the 13th at 8 PM CET, when Paradox Insider will be happening on Twitch. Now I'm quite interested in that of course, but we are here with It's Time to Duel, and as long as nobody brought an Exodia or one of the three, what are they even called? The holy Pokemon? The holy Yu-Gi-Oh cards, whatever, right? The gods. As long as nobody brought those, then we will be fine with a combat system. Now, I will tell you and I will explain and elaborate on that further down below. I absolutely hated every single Crusader Kings II duel system that I have seen. When you go on Reddit, about CK2, if you search for it, you will see a million people complain about the fact that their godlike 165 personal combat rating character lost and died to a -5 personal combat rating 70-year-old. And the reality is, of course, sometimes your character, even if he is godlike, might lose, he might even die. But in CK2, they did something that I absolutely hated, and it was with every single iteration that modders tried to do. Don't get me wrong here, I appreciate all the modders, of course, with their effort. A Game of Thrones, for example, had a round-based combat system, but it still took your agency. You had choices sometimes. The really impactful choices, of course, were trait-based. Like, for example, if you were an intrigue-focused character, you could loosen your enemy's armor, but in reality, the actual fight completely took your agency away. And taking agency away in CK2 always angered me. I hated the system, I completely avoided it, I never wanted to see it because, again, while your character may sometimes lose, you had no agency over it. It just happened, you simply had to hope that it went well. Now, I will say that I am more than surprised with what is in this CK3 Duel update. Or, this is free, of course, again, already established that with Paradox Insider being on the 13th. And I have to say, what they've done here is much more interesting and will not get me to just avoid duels. Let's jump into it, let's find out why that is and why I'm actually, for the first time in these reoccurring dev diaries, don't have to say, and I'm happy about this, but here's a caveat about it. No, I can simply say I'm extremely happy with this dev diary. Let's take a look at this. Ethos of the developed system. Duels should be dangerous. The outcome of an in-depth duel should never be a completely foregone conclusion. Makes sense, right? Otherwise, you would never really go and enter a duel unless you know you will win. Easy. Duels should be reusable, duels should be easy to add anywhere in script, and their results should be as agnostic as possible. A detailed dueling system should be able to account for everything from strict honor duels to battlefield bouts to a knife fight in a tavern. I'm interested to see where the knife fight in the tavern plays into, but I like this idea, of course. It makes it easy to mod into something else as well. If a certain world has very specific duels, think of the trial by combat sort of fights that you see in particular, of course, in Game of Thrones, but also in other fantasy worlds. If it's a magic duel, for example, you can make those decisions right then and there. Duels should be variable. Duels should vary in content and strategy depending on the characters involved and the location and circumstances around them. I really like that idea as well. Later on, I do believe that they also mentioned that weather or just everything that is going on, maybe the weather, I'm not sure actually, I don't think that is written here, but I'm very interested in the idea that where I am fighting also determines how it actually goes for me and how well I can perform. Duels should be character driven. Character traits, relationships, and other qualities should all have an impact on duels, not just prowess. Now that's good news right there. Of course, as I mentioned, if you were an intrigue character, you could go and do something, intrigue oriented for your duels in CK2, but it was so boring. If this is now actually reflected in the duels, then again, I'm very happy. Duels should allow for both experience and intuition. Although understanding the mechanics of the system should be rewarding and allow competent play, a newbie just guessing should still have a fair chance of success. I think this has been a trend in CK3, also in Imperator Rome in particular, where you essentially can play the game without actually knowing everything about the game, because even if you, do things slightly wrong, you will come out ahead having learned and not having to roll back your save because everything went wrong. So yeah, of course it makes sense. Intuition, I personally always prefer over having to learn mechanics, by trial and error. Duels should allow for both roleplay and roleplay. Now this is, as you can have heard from my previous negative criticism here, this is exactly what I wanted from duels in CK. It should be viable to both always play to win and to play according to what makes sense for your character without either totally kneecapping you. This should carry over to the AI, who should be somewhat readable based on skills and character traits. This is big. When you duel someone in Crusader Kings II, all you really need to do is look for just one or two traits that could make it so, one or two intrigue or, one or two stats that could make it so that you get dunked on by virtue of one of these special options, again, the intrigue option there that was a fan favorite, apparently. And I think that was a huge mistake. It was very boring. You either, decided, okay, I'm gonna risk it, because this character doesn't have any of these traits, doesn't have the stats, or you just decided, yeah, they, have it, so I'm gonna skip this guy. And I don't think that was a way to play. I think it is much more interesting when you can look at a character as a whole and say, how would he fight? How would he behave? What would he do? And I gotta tell ya, they apparently haven't, I don't know for sure, of course, but from what I can tell here, they absolutely nailed it. Challenge rival to fight here, of course, is a very classic interaction that has been brought back. A non-lethal single combat will commence immediately. I assume if you were to kill your rival in this circumstance, then you would lose, maybe gain some tyranny and probably lose some prestige, maybe even a whole fame level right there. The victor loses stress and the loser gains stress. Now, he will accept it because he hates you, as it is challenge rival to fight. And now we come to the hard piece of this entire thing. We come to the mechanics. All single combats take place between exactly two characters and are fought to a predetermined end. Of course, whoever wins, whoever loses. Can it be exhaustion? Do you get wounded? Do they get wounded? And so on and so forth. Combat is divided up into distinct rounds with the first defender, the defender, then the attacker selecting an option before we work out whether one or the other has done enough to win or lose. All combats last between 2 and 4 of these rounds, ending automatically after the 4th, though this is a scripted value, so that can be changed. Options available are stylized as distinct combat moves like headbutting your opponent, rushing into an all-out attack, playing defensively, and so on. At the start of your turn in each round, you randomly draw 3 such options from a pool available of choices, with the relative usefulness and drawbacks of each move related to your prowess skill. This is great because it makes it into an indirect deck builder where you specifically, as long as you go on and play, can tell whether you are building a good deck with your prowess, whether you are building a good deck with your traits, with a relationship to your opponent. You will get a chance, or rather you can increase your chance of drawing good cards. Let's name it cards, right? You can see it right down here. You gain 3 options essentially, and when you pull a good one, then you can play it. You will recognize that as you go, but there is much more impact here in how you behave, and the actual rounds aren't just spam. Most duel mods for CK2 and even one for CK3, that one tried very hard, my props for sure, but at the end of the day it wasn't really something that I was happy with. Most duel mods go out of their way to do a round-based system because it makes sense, right? Somebody attacks, somebody defends, and then we get a counter-attack. Stuff like that. However, there are 2 things that always annoyed me about the round-based systems as we've seen it before this one. The first thing is that most of them were just spammy click events. It was like, you attack, they defend. Okay, they attack, you defend. You attack, they get hit. Cool. Do I win or do I lose? Just tell me. I don't need to see rounds if I don't have any real impact. If they don't really matter, it was really just spam. And again, very nice tries, of course, in there. You can't really expect a system like this one, I think, from somebody that does it unpaid. It is, of course, free work that we should appreciate in its full form, but at the same time, I was like, this isn't really what I'm looking for here. And then the other part of what I found annoying when you do a combat system where you have influence is that in classic vanilla CK2 and in most of the circumstances, you didn't see any probability. Now, of course, I don't want to see 70% chance of success, 30% chance of failure. I want to see something like this right here. High, medium, low, because this gives you an impression. This gives you an idea of where you're standing and how it is going and how likely you are to succeed, meaning that you don't just blindly pick options. No, instead, you can simply say, I see this likelihood here, this rough likelihood, and I like to choose it, further giving you agency. I mean, you will know if you follow the channel, if you know what I want out of CK3, you will know that agency is one of the most important parts for me, be it in roleplay, so the actual RP aspect of it, or be it in min-maxing. If you take away my agency, I'm very sad, and this is exactly the solution that I didn't know I wanted, but very much apparently want. Options available, right, we already had that. Suffragan Bishop Arnulfo of Innsbruck, screams my opponent, flailing his hammer furiously at, around, and near me. The higher your prowess, the more likely you are to draw good moves. The worse your prowess, the more likely you are to draw bad ones. It's a little more complicated than that, but it's how it feels player side. Now what I'm thinking here is, and it is mentioned later on, maybe if you have a special relationship with somebody, if you have special traits, you also get particular options that you otherwise wouldn't have, but most of the time, of course, it will be influenced by prowess. Instead of one of your regular combat moves, you may also draw a special move, rather than being, right here it is, rather than being based on just your prowess skill. These take into account traits, location, special relationship between you and your opponent, all manner of things. Now in CK2, there was an achievement, finding love on the battlefield. You had to duel someone and then fall in love with them. Maybe this can also happen here. What if you have a falling out with your partner, and then you have to duel one another. You know, maybe you are even in opposing armies, you are a lover of someone, for example, and then you have to fight. I would love to see whether there are interesting events there. I certainly hope so, because when you look right here, there are a number of events that you can choose, or rather options that you can choose. As a rule of thumb, special moves tend to either offer a better payoff than standard combat moves, or else give secondary effects outside the duel, for example, dread gain, stress loss, etc, etc. At present, we have 18 standard combat moves and 22 special moves. I'm a huge fan of this, because this is the variety that is needed, instead of just being a spammy, you know, localization challenge, essentially, of you reading, oh, what's going on. No, you actually get different moves, they do different things, they influence characters, they influence, you know, the overworld, so anything outside of the duel, and they influence the duel in particular. The primary method of winning a bout is to gain enough likelihood of success. This is a sort of tug of war between you and your foe, representing who is currently winning the duel, which almost all moves adding to the score. The first character to get their score to a certain threshold above the others wins. So essentially, the greater your distance is in likelihood, the more likely you are to win in the next round. Expert Onslaught here is, for example, one of the options to throw out a flurry of rapid attacks and counters. High increase to your likelihood of success, medium increase to your risk of injury. This has already happened, assuming this is what I guess this means, that Edmund Haraldson of England already had his turn, now it is your turn. He had a low increase to his likelihood of success and a low increase to his risk of injury. However, most combat moves also give you some risk of injury, representing how overextended you are and how easy it is for you to make a mistake and hurt yourself, or else be dramatically foiled. As this goes up, it makes it more likely that you'll simply lose when a round ends, even if you haven't managed to explicitly win. So there is winning by likelihood of success, there is losing by the risk of injury, and then there's also simply losing by, you know, whoever has more points after round 4 ends. The basic rubric for fighting is thus trying to maximize your likelihood of success without extending the risk of injury enough that you lose before you can beat your opponent. Makes perfect sense. It is a resource management game right here, a mini game if you will, a tactics game. I think much more interesting than anything that we've seen before. In the penultimate round of a fight, by default, though this can be changed easily by tweaking one number, it becomes much easier both to win and to injure yourself, and certain special moves can also adjust these thresholds. If after the final round of the fight there's still no winner, then the highest prowess skill wins. Oh right, it doesn't even go after your likelihood of success, it just takes the highest prowess skill. The interesting thing though is, and we're going to see that here, that this doesn't mean that whoever started with a higher prowess skill at the start of the fight also wins at that point. So let's say you fight somebody that has a prowess skill of, let's say, 20. You have a prowess skill of, let's say, 10. Now, you know, at the start of this would mean that you have to either injure them or make it so that your likelihood of success is incredibly high and overtakes them, which is already difficult, because in the end, right, they would win simply based on prowess, but this is not true. We can see that right down here with the dual edge malus and the dual edge bonus. As characters duel, they may be afflicted with temporary disadvantage, often due to their opponent severely hurting or intimidating them. This decreases their prowess for the duration of the current bout, but is regained immediately after. So I can bring down the person that has a 20 combat skill if I fight incredibly dirty, if I headbutt them, if I don't know, step on their toes. I can bring their prowess skill down, simply not injure myself, not get their likelihood of success, you know, far enough away, and then have their prowess skill below mine and win. It's possible. I love that idea. Dual edge bonus is of course the opposite here. As characters duel, they may gain temporary advantage, such as by leveraging terrain or special traits. This increases their prowess. Yeah, terrain definitely sounds like, you know, where do you fight, the location. I wish the weather would factor in. I mean, you know, would be topical with winter, but there's nothing about it in here. This increases their prowess for the duration of the current bout and is lost immediately after. Makes a lot of sense. The AI selects combat moves and strategy based roughly off of personality, meaning that not only can it change as they gain prowess related traits, but different characters will often fight differently, even if they share identical prowess. This is what makes this entire system fun. Listen, having 40 different possible options that you can gain, you know, 18 normal ones, 22 special ones, is fine. It's cool, but at some point you will have seen them all. However, if in every single playthrough the way I fight is determined by how I look at my enemy, we are looking at an absolutely outstanding system when it comes to repetition. I can sit down and fight somebody that has 18 prowess with my 44 prowess every single day of the week, but it will turn out differently each time. I will have to consider different things, be it injury, be it likelihood, be it bringing down prowess if they fight dirty. I really like the idea. It's such a great idea because it gives you a different repetition that didn't exist before this at all in any way whatsoever. Dueling in context, since one of our prime goals with the new dueling system has been to make it usable in as many circumstances as they mentioned in battlefield duels, honor duels, etc, etc. Setting one up is nice and easy. We can see it right here, the initiator, then the attacker, the defender, whether it is a duel to fatality, so whether they will die at the end of it, the loser will die at the end of it. Then we have the Locale, so that is the terrain scope, wherever these characters are. And then we have the output event perk interaction. I believe that this has to do with where is it? It's said right here, right. In the chivalry lifestyle tree, the stalwart leader perk will allow you to challenge people to duels. And then down here, invalidation event equals redacted. I wish I knew what it means, but I do not, so we'll see about the full code. What I like about this, again, just the full approach is something that I was missing when it comes to winter. I think poetry was completely sufficient in this regard, but dueling quite clearly is geared towards allowing Paradox to expand it further and further as they go, as CK3 develops, but also, and maybe primarily, to have modders develop it further for their mods, be it total conversions, be it just tweaks, be it, you know, just some smaller mods. This is the right approach. I personally believe that at this point, after CK3 came out, CK3 has to be the minimum level of any future Paradox game in the way that they come out. It came out with an incredibly baseline, and with an incredible baseline, not just in terms of, you know, how it was as a system and how the systems, you know, sort of intertwined, but also with modding capabilities. And we need to urge Paradox, and we need to realize that this is the level that we need to maintain. Winter, I'm shaky on. I told this before, I was hungry for information. Winter is a cool idea, but it isn't useful, for example, for a thing where you would sit down and say, okay, can I make a winter that lasts for 5 years? It's not moddable, at least from what we know. It is not moddable, and that's bad news, in all honesty. That is bad news because the total moddability of CK3 is something that is desperately needed, that is very interesting, and that has been advanced like crazy with this generation of Paradox games, of course, with everything, even with the GUI being incredibly moddable. Duels looks perfectly fine to me. This seems to be a very simple sort of approach that can be altered, that can be changed. The requirements can be altered, the sort of events that you see can be altered, how many rounds there are can be altered, even the distance of when you win, etc, etc, appears to be alterable. Big fan. This is why I am so incredibly happy about this dev diary compared to the ones that we had before. It can be dropped into any effect block, any interaction, decision or event with whatever net results or criteria you like. Complex fight sequences with no muss, no fuss. Very good. There are several ways we use the system in-game at the moment, with the most noticeable being an interaction to duel your rivals, now unlocked by the Chivalry Lifestyle Tree's Stalwart Leader perk. We also use it in several paid events in 1.3, and of course the all-new redacted interaction. So, what do you think? What will the DLC be about? I honestly... Poetry? Fighting? Winter? What do you think? It's a bit of a theme, isn't it? I mean, my favorite theme, I'll be honest with you right now, is role-playing. The fact that they are in the know about this being what, you know, many people wanted. More roleplay abilities, not just in events, but also in actual activities, I think is a very good sign. Redacted. I would love to find out what Redacted is, but I think we will be able to find out soon enough on the 13th again. You can see the interaction right here, and now they essentially just say that long term they would like a dedicated UI. I really would like that. A dedicated UI instead of event-based is always very nice. I don't know whether you've seen it, but Elder Kings, for example, has a beautiful and absolutely gorgeous, at least what they showed off. It's not done yet, of course, but an absolutely gorgeous UI for Magic. If we could get something like that for Dueling, I would also be a huge fan. Sticking with the pointy end, we can see an example fight right here, and you can see that this is the player character. The father is challenging his son, and the father is far inferior. 7 combat skill against 16. Of course, this is a tough fight. This is a fight that most of the time you probably don't want to take. But let's take a look here. He is afraid, so he is a coward. He is deceitful, and he is gregarious. I assume gregarious plays no role here. It would make no sense. You're both horrible educated, education-wise. And then you got some very specific traits here as well. Vengeful, of course. I think this are, I can't remember, honest. And then here we got calm. Both of us lack most traits that would grant special combat moves, and we have no extraneous circumstances that would give us any either, though we've got some special dialogue in places due to being related. That said, there'll still be a strategy here. I can see that my son is deceitful and craven, so overall he's likely to pick combat moves that are cautious or cunning. This means he'll probably play it safe on trying to win via likelihood of success, and instead wait for me to injure myself with my blunders. If I can overwhelm likelihood of success before my injury risk gets too high, then I might be able to beat his superior skill. This is a strategy, and it's essentially the culmination of why I'm so excited. This is a strategy that was not possible in any other personal combat duel system that we have had in this game franchise. And I absolutely love it. I think that is really where I have to come from. I hope that you see why I love it so much, why it is all coming together like this. There's so much roleplay and roleplay. I mean, yeah, okay, nice pun, buddy, listen. What I'm saying is, I really, really like the way this is strung up. Let's take a look at the combat moves. You can see this is a very aggressive one, very high, or rather a high chance of likelihood of success, a very high chance of a risk of injury, and then this already happened. So again, a very cautious approach that the enemy is taking here. This is just high, and this is low and low, but of course, as the dev said right here, well, we're going all in, so Unstable Foundations does nothing for me, and Onslaught is basically playing it safe. Unstable Foundation, yeah, nothing. This is playing it safe, and this is going all out in an opportunity, or, you know, with the attempt to overwhelm your opponent with the likelihood of success. It didn't go all that well. I launched an attack, he launched an attack, and the text at the bottom covers our relative injury risk and the current status of likelihood of success. This is great, because it tells you not just the likelihood of what your next move is going to have as an impact, it also tells you where you currently are. Completely missing in the earlier established combat systems. I have a sword, I have an enemy, and I'm determined to introduce the two by any means. Wild swings, backhanded smacks, flailing strikes from my weapon's pommel, anything to batter my foe. Musa retaliates with a smooth flowing series of rapid thumps and crushing thwacks, each strike forcing me back a little more. My form is deteriorating fast with numerous exploitable gaps, and Musa's stance is formidable. We're evenly matched with victory balancing on a knife edge. So here you can see what the injury thing is, and here you can see the likelihood of success. Now this will happen right here. It looks like my son is playing it a little less overly safe than I thought. Rather than purely waiting for me to hurt myself, he's putting up just enough of a fight to make it difficult to steal a win via the likelihood of success. His deceit is winning out over his cowardice, it seems. I love this. Seriously, I can't say it enough. This system, I went into this when I read the title of the dev there, and I said to myself, not duels. We're gonna sit down, we're all gonna talk it out. You know, it's boring. Who cares? We don't need to see this. But look at this stuff. This is really good stuff. I absolutely adore it. Looks like we're in a bit of a tricky situation where I might get embarrassingly defeated by the AI. We're committed now though, so let's just hope he slips up, and I launch into another enthusiastic onslaught. I have a sword, right? This is actually literally the same text. My form is non-existence. My next risky move could mean defeat, and Musa's stance is passable. My opponent is reeling from me, victory so close that I can practically taste it. It's a very tight one. Both of these characters are pursuing different strategies. One simply wants to wait it out, the other one wants to destroy their opponent when it comes to actually winning the fight. And now here comes the conclusion: the devil takes you, coward. Okay, so we got lucky there. As Musa played it safe rather than pressing his advantage, and we managed not to injure ourselves, but it is now round 3, and this single combat will almost certainly end here. Either my injury risk catches up with me, or I manage to push through that last little bit of threshold to win. Okay, not much competition here, is there? Pure aggression has brought us this far, so yeah, it's simply pure aggression again. Put the boot in, you combine a heavy attack with an unexpected kick to Musa's vitals. This would also, I assume, lower the prowess stat. Of course, it is more useful at the start of a fight, but you know, you can still do it. Up here, actually, also quite interesting. Where the hell was it? Headbutt, here we go. You try to get inside Musa's guard and headbutt him in the face. So essentially the way I see it, this is dirty fighting. This is where you take down the prowess of your opponent, making them draw worse things and altering your ability. So let's say at the first round you would like to have something that is a dirty fight, you know, or rather a dirty card. If you are in the position of wanting to do that with your character, you lower their prowess, they get worse cards, you keep your cards, and you're good to go, right? That is essentially how you can approach this. I think, again, really fascinating system. In the end, of course, it is a win right here. Determined to see my opponent toppled, I throw my entire weight into a powerful cleave that sends him reeling, following up with a vicious kick. Musa is sent staggering. I don't let the opportunity go to waste, flying into a storm of quick slashes that beat him screaming into the sand. Weakly, my foe twitches his mace hand, trying to muster up the will to defy me further. Simply ready my weapon to cut his throat, at least till I hear trembling yield. And look at that. I assume had he not yield, you would have gotten a chance to, you know, I mean, maybe you have to be deceitful to kill people in a duel as well. I'm absolutely not certain how this actually works. But, you know, there's no option right here. It's just I am victorious and the combat is over. But yeah, still, very interesting system indeed. Two very skilled characters fighting each other becomes a mind game of who can work out the best route to victory first. An incredibly inferior character versus a drastically skilled opponent turns into lots of desperate gambits to even the prowess ratings or exploit their personality. Two very aggressive characters become a pure slugfest that often comes down to a sudden death and so on. Cool stuff. Now right here we see the player character lose a bunch of times. It's nice flavor, right? It's very nice flavor. You could also say you rue the day you defeated Earl Ewan. The interesting thing here is right there, the Pope and Matilda have also defeated Earl Ewan. Unlucky, my friend. Now, I really like this. Let me know what you think about it. I think that this is pretty cool. I would really like to see how this goes. Fun fact, putting the location trigger on crocodilians turning up in fatal something honor duels, whatever, was stuck on my to-do list until quite late into development. This means that for the vast majority of time spent internally playtesting, crocodiles would tend to turn up in any fight that wasn't explicitly indoors. Tiger, steppe, European farmland, Tibetan mountain, the middle of the Sahara, none were safe from the surprise crocodile. Let me know what do you think about this. With the crocodile, we get another pointer that there are some random external factors that can happen, you know. Maybe there can be an ally that interrupts the fight. Maybe there's a crocodile, maybe there's a wolf, I don't know. Something like that. Very, very interesting stuff. What do you think about this feature? What do you think the DLC will be? Now, that being said, we will take a quick look into the free features. There's some stuff that I marked. I don't think too much is relevant to mention here. I think we'll go through that as the patch comes out and I do an information video on it. But the thing that really interested me are these three things right here. As the patron of a holy order, you can now hire it even if it is already hired by someone else except another player. You pay the full piety cost to the person who has already hired it rather than the usual hiring it for free. That is crazy. I don't know how strong this is. You could take away a holy order of one of your enemies. You know, it is quite possible if you just go away and do that. It gives certainly buffs having a holy order in your land, making it so that the region around you will mostly rely on them and most likely, you know, put you in a position where you can simply pull the holy order away. But it also makes it clear, of course, that you can always use the holy order that you paid for at the end of the day. Reduced fascination gain from learning from +2 to +1. That is a massive nerf. So of course every sort of innovation increases as you go by the development of your counties, and then, you know, based on just the general progress, whether you have any neighbors that have it and so on and so forth. But then you have the cultural head, the cultural leader, and that one was always very, very impactful, at least until now. From +2 to +1. 4 learning leader used to be an 8. That's really good. That is pretty strong. It's just a 4 now. A 20 lead is still amazing, but it used to be a 40, right? This is a huge nerf, and I think it encourages, or at least I think it is supposed to encourage you building up your territory. As you build up your territory, the average dev of your culture will rise, and the average dev of your culture will impact every single innovation. So honestly, I think this is a major nerf to any learning-oriented playstyle, but at the same time encourages building tall even more, because you benefit more from that than from being incredibly smart. What do you think about that change? I think that's a massive change, honestly. I think it's a bit not often talked about. It is now possible to recruit children from prison as long as they're not the heir to one of their liege's titles. Right there, again, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I think this one is interesting because you may be able to, you know, inherit or get somebody that is in line very far behind, maybe has a claim, and that out of the prison instead of, you know, having to, I don't know, persuade them. The Pope will no longer grant himself Rome every year and gain piety for it. Okay. Fixed Great Holy Wars invalidating rather than changing target if someone, for instance, takes the target's primary title. Very good. Should have been in earlier, but hey, if it's coming, it's coming. It is now much harder to imprison a claimant that has the support of a faction that has pressed demands. I like that a lot. It makes it so that you need to take action against that faction instead of just cheesing it by getting rid of the claimants themselves very easily. Ended the Tropacalypse. Yeah. What do you think about this one? I'm a big fan of this one. I hope that on the 13th the reveal will be good. I hope there's, I don't know what the DLC is, but everything around this, be it duels, poetry, or winter, is roleplay oriented, so I have to assume that the DLC will also be roleplay oriented. Now, with that being said, I would like to thank the members of the channel that are supporting this channel, of course, directly. Thank you, dear and absolutely gorgeous barons, counts, and dukes. Thank you very much. If you don't own CK3 or Imperator or other games yet, you can purchase them in my Nexus store. The link is in the description. With that being said, later, alligator.